evening, everyone. On this momentous evening, I'm Juju Chang. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Tonight, ABC News has an exclusive interview with President Joe Biden. Our George Stephanopoul sat down with the president for his first televised interview since that poor debate performance against Donald Trump. President Biden says he is committed to staying in the race and confident that he will prevail and beat Donald Trump. The president was directly called on to answer for his faltering appearances and whether he still has the mental and physical fitness for another term in the White House. Our team is standing by, of course, for analysis, but first, let's get to the interview.
Mr. President, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with the debate. You and your team have said you had a bad night, but your friend Nancy Pelosi actually framed the question that I think is on the minds of millions of Americans. Was this a bad episode or the sign of a more serious condition?
It's a bad episode. No indication of any serious condition. I was exhausted. I didn't listen to my instincts in terms of preparing, and I had a bad night.
You know, you say you were exhausted, and I know you've said that before as well, but you came, and you did have a tough month, but you came home from Europe about 11 or 12 days before the debate, spent 6 days in Camp David. Why wasn't that enough rest time, enough recovery time?
Because I was sick. I was feeling terrible. Matter of fact, the docs with me, I asked them, they did a COVID test because they were trying to figure out what was wrong. They did a test to see whether or not I had some infection, you know, a virus. I didn't. They just had a really bad cold.
And did you ever watch the debate afterwards?
I don't think I did, no.
Well, what I want to get at is what were you experiencing as you were going through the debate? Did you know how badly it was going?
Yeah, look, the whole way I prepared, nobody's fault, mine. Nobody's fault but mine. I prepared what I usually would do, sitting down, as I did come back with foreign leaders or the National Security Council, for explicit detail. And I realized about partway through that, you know, I get quoted, the New York Times had me down at 10 points before the debate, 9 now, or whatever the hell it is. The fact of the matter is that what I looked at is that he also lied 28 times. I mean, the way the debate ran, not my fault, no one else's fault. No one else's fault.
But it seemed like you were having trouble from the first question in, even before he spoke.
Well, I just had a bad night. You've had some bad interviews once in a while. I can't remember any, but I'm sure you did.
I've had plenty. I guess the question, the problem is here for a lot of Americans watching is you've said, going back to 2020, watch me, to people who are concerned about your age. And, you know, 50 million Americans watched that debate. It seemed to confirm fears they already had.
Well, look, after that debate, I did 10 major events in a row, including until 2 o'clock in the morning after that debate. I did events in North Carolina. I did events in Georgia. Did events like this today. Large crowds, overwhelming response, no slipping. And so I just had a bad night. I don't know why.
And how quickly did it come to you that you were having that bad night?
Well, it came to me as having a bad night when I realized that even when I was answering a question, even though they turned his mic off, he was still shouting. And I let it distract me. I'm not blaming it on that. But I realized that I just wasn't in control.
But part of the other concern is that this seems to have fit into a pattern of decline that has been reported on recently. New York Times had a headline on July 2nd, Biden's lapses are said to be increasingly common and worrisome. Here's what they wrote. People who have spent time with President Biden over the last few months or so said the lapses appear to have grown more frequent, more pronounced, and after Thursday's debate, more worrisome. By many accounts, as evidenced by video footage, observation, and interviews, Mr. Biden is not the same today as he was even when he took office 3.5 years ago. Similar reporting in the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. Are you the same man today that you were when you took office 3.5 years ago?
In terms of successes, yes. I also was the guy who put together a peace plan for the Middle East that may be coming to fruition. I was also the guy that expanded NATO. I was also the guy that grew the economy. All the individual things that were done were ideas I had or I fulfilled. I moved on. And so, for example, well, that was true then. What's Biden done lately? Today, just announced 200,000 new jobs. We're moving in a direction that no one's ever taken on. I know you know this from the days in the government. I took on Big Pharma. I beat them. No one said I could beat them. I took on all the things we said we got done. We were told we couldn't get done. And part of it is what I said when I ran was I wanted to do three things: restore some decency to the office, restore some support for the middle class instead of trickle-down economics, built from the middle out and the bottom up, the way the wealthy still do fine, everyone does better, and unite the country.
But what has all that work over the last 3.5 years cost you physically, mentally, emotionally?
Well, I just think it cost me a really bad night, a bad run. But, George, I'm optimistic about this country. I don't think we're a country of losers, that he points out. I don't think America's in tough shape. I think America's on the cusp of breaking through in so many incredible opportunities. This next term, I'm going to make sure we have straighten out the tax system. I'm going to make sure we're in a situation where we have health care for all people, where we're in a position where we have child care and elder care, free up, and all these things. The one thing I'm proudest of is, remember when my economic plan was put forward, a lot of the mainstream economists said it's not going to work. Well, guess what? You now have 16 Nobel laureates, 16 of them in economics, saying that Biden's next term would be, based on what he wants to do, enormous success. Trump's plan would cause a recession, would significantly increase inflation. I've made great progress, and that's what I plan on doing, and we can do this.
I understand that, and I'm not disputing that. What I'm asking you is about your personal situation. Do you dispute that there have been more lapses, especially in the last several months?
Can I run the 110 flat? No, but I'm still in good shape.
Are you more frail?
No.
I know you
Come
spoke.
keep my schedule.
I know you spoke with your doctor after the debate. What did he say?
He said, he just looked at me and said, "You're exhausted." I said, "Look, I have medical doctors travel me everywhere, every president does, as you know. Medical doctors, some of the best in the world, travel me everywhere I go. I have an ongoing assessment of what I'm doing. They don't hesitate to tell me if they think there's something wrong."
I know you said you have an ongoing assessment. Have you had a full neurological and cognitive evaluation?
I get a full neurological test every day with me. And I've had a full physical. I had, I've been able to read for my physicals. Yes, the answer is.
I know your doctor said he consulted with a neurologist. I guess I'm asking a slightly different question. Have you had the specific cognitive tests, and have you had a neurologist, a specialist, do an examination?
No, no one said I had to. No one said, they said I'm good.
Would you be willing to undergo an independent medical evaluation that included neurological and cognitive tests and release the results to the American people?
Look, I have a cognitive test every single day. Every day I have that test. Everything I do. Not only am I campaigning, but I'm running the world. And that's not how it sounds like hyperbole. But we are the essential nation in the world. Madeleine Albright was right. And every single day, for example, today, before I come out here, I'm on the phone with the Prime Minister of, anyway, I shouldn't get into detail, but with Netanyahu. I'm on the phone with the new Prime Minister of England. I'm working on what we're doing with regard to, in Europe, with regard to expansion of NATO and whether it's going to stick. I'm taking on Putin. Every day, there's no day I go through, there are not those decisions I have to make every single day.
And you have been doing that, and the American people have been watching, yet their concerns about your age and your health are growing. So that's why I'm asking, to reassure them, would you be willing to have the independent medical evaluation?
Watch me there's a lot of time left in this campaign. It's over 125 days.
So
I'll make a decision.
The right answer right now is no, you don't want to do that right now.
No, I've already done it.
You talked a lot about your successes at the beginning of this interview, and I don't want to dispute that. I don't want to debate that. But as you know, elections are about the future, not the past. They're about tomorrow, not yesterday. And the question on so many people's minds right now is, can you serve effectively for the next 4 years?
George, I'm the guy that put NATO together, the future. No one thought I could expand it. I'm the guy that shut Putin down. No one thought could happen. I'm the guy that put together the South Pacific Initiative with AUKUS. I'm the guy that got 50 nations, out, not only in Europe, outside of Europe as well, to help Ukraine. I'm the guy that got Japanese to expand their budget. So, I mean, and for example, when I decided we used to have 40% of the computer chip, and we invented the chip, that little chip for the computer chip. It's in everything from cell phone to weapons. And so we used to have 40%, we're down to virtually nothing. So I get in the plane against the advice of everybody, and I fly to South Korea. I convinced them to invest in the United States, billions of dollars. Now we have tens of billions of dollars being invested in the United States, making us back in a position where we're going to own that industry again. We have, I mean, I just, anyway, I don't want to take too much credit. I have a great staff.
But all that, I guess my point is, all that takes a toll. Do you have the mental and physical capacity to do it for another 4 years?
I believe so. I wouldn't be running if I didn't think I did. Look, I'm running again because I think I understand best what has to be done to take this nation to a completely new level. We're on our way. We're on our way. And look, the decision recently made by the Supreme Court on immunity, you know, the next president of the United States, it's not just about whether he or she knows what they're doing. It's not about a conglomerate of people making decisions. It's about the character of the president. The character of the president is going to determine whether or not this Constitution is employed the right way.
And we should note that ABC News offered Donald Trump the same opportunity for a one-on-one interview, and he declined. We'll have more of George Stephanopoulos' exclusive interview with President Biden in just 60 seconds. Stay with us.
Whenever news breaks,
we are here in Israel, a nation at war.
In Rolling Fork, this tornado tore through this town.
From Lewiston, Maine.
The scene of a horrific mass shooting.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike.
ABC News Live everywhere.
In Iceland, let's go.
On the 2024 campaign trail.
Here at 10 Downing Street.
Wherever the story is.
We're going to take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live, streaming free everywhere.
There is a price to be paid every time a survivor shares their story. I will not be silenced.
Do you feel the church accepted abuse?
I wouldn't say accepted it as so much pretended it didn't exist.
Yep, that's him.
Yep.
Ready? Kira Phillips with ABC News. Does your church protect sexual predators?
The powerful new Impact by Nightline. Secrets of the 2x2 Church.
There's nothing pretty about hearing this.
Now streaming on Hulu.
Welcome back. Let's return now to ABC's George Stephanopoulos' exclusive interview with President Joe Biden.
Let me ask you a tougher, more personal question. Are you sure you're being honest with yourself when you say you have the mental and physical capacity to serve another 4 years?
Yes, I am, because, George, the last thing I want to do is not be able to meet that. I think, as some of the senior economists and senior foreign policy specialists say, if I stop now, I'd go down in history as a pretty successful president. No one thought I could get done what we got done.
But are you being honest with yourself as well about your ability to defeat Donald Trump right now?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
You say that, and let me challenge you.
Sure.
Because you were close, but behind going into the debate. You're further behind now by any measure. It's been a two-man race for several months. Inflation has come down. In those last few months, he's become a convicted felon, yet you're still falling further behind.
You guys keep saying that. George, do you know polling better than anybody? Do you think polling data is accurate as it used to be?
I don't think so, but I think when you look at all of the polling data right now, it shows that he's certainly ahead in the popular vote, probably even more ahead in the battleground states. And one of the other key factors there is it shows that in many of the battleground states, the Democrats who are running for Senate and the House are doing better than you are.
Well, that's not unusual in some states. I carried an awful lot of Democrats last time I ran in 2020. Look, I remember them telling me the same thing in 2020. I can't win. The polls show I can't win. Remember 2020, the red wave was coming. Before the vote, I said, that's not going to happen. We're going to win. We did better in an off year than almost any incumbent president ever has done. They said in 2023, all the tough races, we're not going to win. I went into all those areas, all those districts, and we won.
All that is true, but 2020 was a close race. And your approval rating has dropped significantly since then. I think the last poll I saw was at about 36%. The number of Americans who think you're too old to serve has doubled since 2020. Wouldn't a clear-eyed political calculus tell you that it's going to be much tougher to win in 2024?
Not when you're running against a pathological liar. Not when he hadn't been challenged in a way that he's about to be challenged. Not when people...
You've had months to challenge him.
Oh, I sure had months, but I was also doing a hell of a lot of other things, like wars around the world, like keeping NATO together, like working... Anyway. But look...
Do you really believe you're not behind right now?
I think it's all the pollsters I talk to tell me it's a toss-up. It's a toss-up. And when I'm behind, there's only one poll I'm really far behind, CBS poll and NBC, and...
New York Times and NBC both have you about 6 points behind in the popular vote.
That's exactly right. New York Times had me behind before anything happened to do with this race. Had me behind 10 points. 10 points had me behind. Nothing's changed substantially in the debate, the New York Times poll.
Just when you look at the reality, though, Mr. President, I mean, you won the popular vote in 2020, but it was still deadly close in the Electoral College.
7 million votes.
Yes, but you're behind now in the popular vote.
I don't buy that.
Is it worth the risk?
I don't think anybody's more qualified to be president or win this race than me.
You know, the heart of your case against Donald Trump is that he's only out for himself, putting his personal interest ahead of the national interest. How do you respond to critics who say that by staying in the race, you're doing the same thing?
Oh, come on. Well, I don't think those critics know what they're talking about.
They're just wrong?
They're just wrong. Look, Trump is a pathological liar. Trump is, he is... Have you ever seen anything Trump did that benefited somebody else, not him? You can't answer, I know.
I've questioned him and his allies as persistently as any journalist has.
No, I know you have. I'm not being critical.
Yeah.
I'm not being critical. But look, I mean, the man is a congenital liar. As I said, they pointed out in that debate he lied 28 times the Times, or whatever number, over 20 times. Talk about how good his economy was, how he brought down inflation, how this is a guy who, unlike only other president other than him is Hoover, lost more jobs than he created. This is a guy who told us to put bleach in our arms to deal with COVID, when over a million people died. This is a guy who talks about wanting to get rid of the health care provision we put in place. This is a guy who wants to give the power back to big pharma to be able to charge exorbitant prices for drugs. This is a guy who wants to undo every single thing I've done. Every single thing.
I understand that. I understand that's why you want to stay in the race. But have you convinced yourself that only you can defeat him?
I convinced myself of two things. I'm the most qualified person to beat him, and I know how to get things done.
If you can be convinced that you cannot defeat Donald Trump, will you stand down?
Well, it depends if the Lord Almighty comes down and tells me that, I might do that.
Well, I mean, on a more practical level, Washington Post just reported in the last hour that Senator Mark Warner is assembling a group of senators together to try and convince you to stand down because they don't think you can win.
Well, Mark is a good man. We've never had that. He also tried to get the nomination, too. Mark's not. Mark and I have a different perspective. I respect him.
And if Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and Nancy Pelosi come down and say, we're worried that if you stay in the race, we're going to lose the House and the Senate, how will you respond?
I go into detail with them. I've spoken to all of them in detail, including Jim Clyburn. Every one of them. They all said I should stay in the race. Stay in the race. None of the people said I should leave.
But if they do?
Well, it's like, they're not going to do that.
You sure?
Well, yeah, I'm sure. Look, I mean, if the Lord Almighty came down and said, Joe, get out of the race, I'd get out of the race. The Lord Almighty's not coming down. I mean, these hypotheticals, George, if all...
But it's not that hypothetical anymore. I grant that they have not requested the meeting, but it's been reported...
I've met with them. I've met with a lot of these people. I've talked with them regularly. I had an hour conversation with Hakeem. I had more time than that with Jim Clyburn. I spent time with many hours, off and on, the last little bit, with Chuck Schumer. It's not like I had all the governors. All the governors.
I agree that the Lord Almighty is not going to come down, but if you are told reliably from your allies, from your friends and supporters in the Democratic Party, in the House and the Senate, that they're concerned you're going to lose the House and the Senate if you stay in, what will you do?
I'm not going to answer that question. It's not going to happen.
What's your plan to turn the campaign around?
You saw it today. How many people do you draw crowds like I drew today? You find me any more enthusiastic than today? Huh?
I mean, I don't think you want to play the crowd game. Donald Trump can draw big crowds. There's no question about that.
He can draw a big crowd, but what does he say? Who's he have? I'm the guy supposedly in trouble. We raised $38 million within 4 days after this. We have over 1 million individual contributors. Individual contributors. Less than $200. I mean, I've not seen what you're proposing.
You haven't seen the fall off in the polls. You haven't seen the reports of discontent in the Democratic Party, House Democrats, Senate Democrats.
I've seen it from the press.
So much to analyze. And so for more insight on this interview, we're joined now by contributing political correspondent Rachel Bade, who's also author of the Politico Playbook. Rachel, thanks for joining us.
I would be here.
I know that every source you have in Washington is going through the tea leaves and looking at it. Is there anything you or they saw tonight that is moving the needle on this? And is even a perfect performance going to move the needle?
Yeah, I was hearing even before this interview aired that a perfect performance would sort of just prolong the inevitable right now, that, you know, Biden from the debate is so damaged that people will not forget what happened last Thursday, even if he, you know, has the best interview possible here. And because of that sort of line of thinking, I would say that what we saw tonight is actually one of the worst possible scenarios for Democrats. He didn't do so bad that it's obvious and a whole bunch of Democrats are going to come out, go on record and say it's time for you to step aside. But he didn't do so amazingly that people are going to forget this. And so they're in this sort of limbo scenario. So, I mean, look, it wasn't as bad as last Thursday, but certainly not great, and that means more Democrats will still have concern.
And you know that on Capitol Hill, we're hearing about what Senator Warner is doing. We're hearing that Hakeem Jeffries is meeting with people. What do you think will come out of these meetings? What are you hearing?
Yeah, so I think next week is going to be a crazy week, Juju. I mean, the lawmakers have been out for, what, a week now for congressional recess. This means they could avoid the press, they can avoid the cameras and not have to weigh in. But at some point, they're not going to be able to hide anymore. And a lot of people have been talking on background, they've been talking off the record, and they've been very blunt, thinking that, you know, the Biden campaign, the presidency, his presidential campaign is essentially dead. And so we're going to see, I think, a lot more lawmakers come out. I think, you know, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, they're hearing from a lot of concerned members. And these aren't just random members here. I mean, Mark Warner, the chair of the Intelligence Committee, he helps Joe Biden get his agenda through Congress. He has a lot of respect.
And this is friendly fire. This
Yes.
is a lot going on. Rachel Bade, thank you so much for your insights, as always.
Of course.
Now let's bring in our ABC senior White House correspondent, Selena Wang. Selena, some people were calling this interview a televised cognitive test. How did the president score?
Well, look, this certainly did not quell the panic within the Democratic Party. In fact, it may have increased the schisms here. Now you have the camp of those who think that the president was just fine, that this is how President Biden normally is. And then the other camp who believe that this really underscores the challenges of his candidacy, that he didn't do enough to turn this around. I've been speaking with some donors and allies here who say that this didn't really change the status quo. Yes, it was far better than he did on that disastrous debate, but he didn't do enough to stem the damage here. And you, of course, have lawmakers, donors, and allies who are really waiting out on the sidelines, watching to see how he does in these rallies, in this critical interview, to decide if they want to continue supporting the president or if they want to join the growing chorus of those who are publicly calling him to step aside.
And how united is the support inside the White House? What are you hearing from your sources about how the president's interview went tonight?
Yeah, I was just talking to the White House, and they're calling this a solid interview. They believe that we need to focus less on the president's delivery and what he says and what he's done. The president, of course, has said so himself, that 90 minutes shouldn't erase all the work that he's done in the last 3.5 years. They tout that he spoke about all the jobs that he's created, the work he's done around chips, on uniting NATO, on pushing back Putin in Ukraine. So in their view, this is just Joe Biden being Joe Biden. He was solid. He was never a spectacular speaker to begin with, and you certainly didn't get that today either.
And one of Biden's biggest surrogates, California Governor Gavin Newsom, is out campaigning for the president today, calling this an important weekend, saying none of us are naive. What are Biden and his advisors looking for to determine whether the campaign can recover from all this?
Yeah, Juju. I mean, look, polling is one thing, and the numbers have been getting worse. You have both the Wall Street Journal and New York Times polling showing that Trump is widening his lead over Biden's, now at least 6%, 6-point lead. This is the spread, and it is growing. But of course, for the inner circle of the advisors to the president, they are still strongly standing behind him. They still believe that he is the best chance for the party to defeat Donald Trump. In other parts of the White House administration and other donors and ally circles, however, they believe that this inner circle is too tightly around this president and that they aren't hearing all of the criticism from the outside and that they're being too dismissive of it. But really, Juju, like you said, this is really a make or break it moment for the president, and he needs to continue to perform in these coming days. As I've been hearing from allies, it's not just one okay interview, one good rally. It's a successive string of days where the president needs to show that he has the stamina and mental acuity.
Selena Wang on another busy summer weekend. Thanks for your reporting and insights, as always. And thank you for joining us for this ABC News exclusive interview with President Biden. ABC News Live is here for you all night with the latest news, context, and analysis of the president's interview with our own George Stephanopoul. Of course, coverage continues straight ahead here on ABC News Live, so be sure to stay with us. We'll be back.
Whenever news breaks,
we are here.